alert, we are learning Israel launched a retaliatory strike against Iran overnight. So far, no comment from Tel Aviv, but we know Iran's nuclear facilities are secure. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Friday morning. I'm Carly Shimkus.
And I'm Todd Pyro. We have not received an official statement from the Biden administration, but a source does say the U.S. was notified before the strike, but was not involved.
It's enough of a response from both sides to where they're playing this tit for tat, which is a dangerous game, but they're doing it in somewhat of a calculated way to not escalate things beyond what it already is. And so I think that we need to be looking at how can we actually try and gain additional peace. What we don't want is a full-out regional war, so it's about understanding the diplomacy and what is needed to continue our efforts.
Madeleine Rivera standing by with more in Washington on that. John Ullyot on deck with expert analysis. But we begin with Jeff Paul live on the ground in Tel Aviv, Israel. Jeff.
Well, yeah, good morning. And there really has been a lot of building tension over the last couple of days as this region really waited to see how Israel would respond to that unprecedented attack by Iran last Saturday. We didn't know what it would look like, when it would happen, and some people even yesterday were thinking it wasn't going to happen until well after the upcoming Passover holiday. But we now know, according to a Fox News military source, that Israel is responding to Iran with these very targeted and specific strikes in the Esfahan region. Now, that's roughly 200 miles away from the Iranian capital of Tehran. And this is significant because not only is it close to the capital, but it's also near the Natanz nuclear facility. Now, we should mention the site was not hit, and the strike appeared to target the nearby Iranian airbase, but really clearly shows that Israel has the capabilities to hit this area and hit it when it wants to. Now, as it stands, Iranian state media has been downplaying the strike. They haven't reported any damage from the strike or direct impacts. Really, the only comments that we have heard from Iran is that there were explosions heard, and that was caused by Iran's own air defense systems. Iran claims it intercepted 3 drones, and it has not identified a potential source of this strike. In fact, images from state media in Iran appear to show life resuming back to normal after there were some flights that were canceled in the early morning hours. Now, so far, no comments from the Israelis, but we are learning that according to reporting by Reuters, a senior Iranian official told them Iran has no plans to strike back immediately. Back out here live in Tel Aviv, life appears to be resuming. Normally, traffic is flowing. People are shopping ahead of the Sabbath. And we should mention, though, that the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has put out a warning to its people here in Tel Aviv and throughout the greater Israel area to stay close to the major cities that they're in, don't venture out, and also putting out a general warning to Americans who are abroad here in Israel to just pay attention to what's going on right now in the Middle East. Back to you.
Jeff Paul live in Tel Aviv. Jeff, thank you. Madeleine Rivera has more from Washington. Madeline.
Good morning, Carly and Todd. As we wait for an official response from the White House, we can report that a government source tells Fox the U.S. was not involved in Israel's strike and that the Israelis had given the U.S. a heads up. Israel had promised it would act after Iran's attack last weekend. That's despite the United States' urge for restraint in the Middle East. Iran's foreign minister says they had told the White House that if Israel retaliated, their response would be decisive, definitive, and regretful for them. But the hope is that because the retaliation was limited in nature, this could help bring down the temperature in the region. The White House has been struggling to walk a fine line. President Biden told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the U.S. wouldn't participate in a counteroffensive if Israel did launch one against Iran. At the same time, it's reiterating U.S. support for Israel's defense. Here's CIA Director Bill Burns speaking about that commitment after Iran's attack last weekend.
The Iranians fired off something like 330 drones and missiles combined. Turned out to be a spectacular failure for them. Of those 330 missiles, only 4 or 5 actually impacted in Israel, and none of them did any significant damage.
There could be political ramifications for President Biden. The president has seen an erosion of support among progressives who are incensed about his handling of the war in Gaza. He's been met by pro-Palestinian protesters at nearly every campaign event, most recently in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia this week. He'll be speaking at a conference for construction and maintenance union workers in D.C. today. We'll see if he'll have any comments then about the incident that took place overnight. Carly and Todd.
All right, Madeleine Rivera, live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in former Trump National Security aide, John Ullyot. John, good morning to you. Success could mean different things when it comes to something like this, but do you think that this strike was the right thing for Israel to do, and would you characterize it as successful?
Absolutely, Carly. Good morning. It was absolutely successful from Israel's standpoint because, number one, they had to respond. And so they did so because politically they just could not allow Iran to have a direct threat on their, even though it was unsuccessful, a direct threat on their soil. So they had to respond. But what they did is this was a message that they sent of will and capability. They have the will to strike Iran when they need to, and they have the capability to do so. And that's why this was just very well crafted. What they did is they attacked deep into Iran, and they attacked a city that has the biggest nuclear facility, Natanz, that's right next to it. So what they were saying is look, what we need you to notice is that we have the will and we have the capability to attack you at any time. So don't cross any line ever again in terms of striking us on our territory.
So, John, to that point, does that mean this is the end, that both Israel and Iran have gotten that off-ramp that they've wanted? Or, John, is this just the beginning?
No, Todd, what I think is that this is something where now there's a status quo on both sides that neither side wants to cross. So Iran demonstrated that it is willing. Once again, there's a will and capabilities message from their standpoint that they have the will to attack Israel directly, which is something that has never happened before. And second is that they have the capability to do so. And on the other side, once again, Israel sent a very strong signal because that's deep into Iran, right in the middle of the country, and right next to its most important strategic facility, which is the Natanz nuclear facility. And so right now, look, it's like on a schoolyard where you have two bullies that they each showed that they have strength and that they have the will, and that now neither side wants to go beyond that because it'll result in something that neither side wants to see happen.
Yeah, let's talk about President Biden for a moment because it was big news, his initial reaction when he had that phone call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the Saturday attempt at strikes, the 300 strikes that Iran tried to launch in Israel's direction. And the president's response was, don't retaliate, take the win, that this didn't, that you were able to defend yourself against those strikes. Israel didn't heed that advice. So what does that say about our president, our relationship with Israel, and his foreign policy reaction?
Well, number one, Carly, he should never have telegraphed whatever he's saying to Bibi privately. And so that's a big mistake for President Biden to actually say that out loud about, hey, we're going to tell them not to retaliate. But number two is that Bibi said very publicly, and probably as a rebuke to what Biden said publicly or what he allowed to be leaked publicly, is that Bibi said negative. We are going to make our own decision on retaliation. And Bibi was in a spot where he had to retaliate because he had to once again demonstrate that will and that capability, not just to Iran, but also to his populace, to the Israelis, so that they know that they have somebody who's very strong, who has their back and is not going to allow an attack like what happened on Saturday.
John Ullyot, amazing insight. We appreciate it as always, sir. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.